Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review is brought to you in part by Rogers Hobby Center in Saginaw, Michigan, where the fun begins. This review covers the 1965 Ford Fairlane Modified Stalker Kit. It's a 125 scale kit from AMT number 1190. Now, the kit is typical of the style of oval racetrack cars from the 60s and 70s. And these cars were raced on dirt or asphalt tracks, depending on where they were. And I remember it seemed like every gas station or repair shop had one of these cars sitting on their lot just waiting for race day. Now, this kit's based on the original 65 annual kit, and then the modified Stalker was issued in 1970. It's rated for the intermediate builder, and there's about 100 pieces, but 31 of them are not used in the kit. They're extras from other versions. Now, there's a stock engine and some other versions too, but they're not used. Now, this is molded in white, clear, and chrome, and there's tires with nice pad-printed Goodyear sidewall branding. And slicks for both front and the back, as they were used on race cars like that. Now, oh hey, that's Newt. Newt's tapping on the glass, and it looks like he's got a question. Now, what you got there, Newt?
That doesn't look like a race car.
Well, this one's not all beat up like most of them would be, but and it's probably not something that you'd see nowadays. But if back around 1970, this was the standard type of vehicle that they would use for local dirt tracks and asphalt tracks. So you could also maybe see those if you go out there on nostalgia night to the local racetrack.
Why are the tires so big?
Well, that's a good question, Newt. On these kind of tracks, which are very short tracks, they're only about a half mile. Mostly your races are going to be won by getting a good grip on the corners and going into turns, because there's very little straightaway. So you needed a lot of tread surface area to get a good grip and make higher speed turns. Here are the contents of the kit, and overall this was a pretty easy build. It kind of harkens back to the simpler models when they were easier for kids to build and put together. They seem to be a little more fun back then, but nonetheless, if you want something that's a fairly easy build or an intermediate build for your youngster, this would be a good candidate. Now, please remember to heed all the safety and use guidelines when using any of the products that you see or hear used in the review. And for the most part, we'll be using liquid cement and sometimes some super glue or white glue for clear parts. Here are the decals for the kit. They're pretty nice. The color is good, the register is good, and some of them even try to replicate the hand-painted numbers that you'd find on these old Stalkers. But you may find that some setting solution is useful for some of the stripes and larger parts there to help it conform to the body. Paint these parts from the kit to build the racing engine, and before we paint the detailing, and remember to scrape the paint or chrome from any of the parts that you're going to assemble so that they stick to each other. So follow the instructions and complete the engine and put the block heads, front cover, and the oil pan together, and those get painted Ford blue. The intake manifold and the bell housing, those are aluminum, and the transmission is painted steel color. The distributor base is aluminum, and the cap there is flat black. Silver is added to the fuel pump and the alternator, and the pulleys and the fan are gloss black, and the fan belt is flat black. The headers are painted flat white, and after they're dry, attached to the engine. And then the starter is a gloss black. And here you see the back end view of the engine with the steel tranny there. So put that together and let that dry. And so here are those nice looking racing tires. They're wide slicks with pad printed Goodyear logos on them. And if you're building a car for the asphalt track, you can just sand the road surface there. And then if you're building the dirt track version, you can sand that, and then also add a little cross diamond pattern with a fine-tooth saw, like a jeweler's saw, to make it look more realistic. Now we can assemble the wheel and tire subassembly there. And remember to scrape the chrome off where you want to glue those, as well as the paint that you paint the wheel backs with, so that the glue will stick. And I find that the tire glue that they use for RC cars works pretty nicely. It's black and does a good job. Now, you're going to have to just slip the front side in from the front, and then the wheel backs on the back side, and then place them into the tires and let those dry. The chassis is very simplistic. It basically includes the frame, the drivetrain, the gas tank, and the suspension. It's all molded in, and you can pick some of those out if you like to give it a little more detail, but it's a very simple piece. There's not much assembly there. Here are the pieces that you'll need to complete the chassis. And then remember, again, make sure that there's no paint or chrome so that the parts stick together where you want them. Now the axles are just stuck into one wheel back and inserted through the holes in the chassis pan, and then the other side wheel and tire is pressed onto that. And then squeeze those so that they fit and bottom out. Now I found the front axle to be just a little bit long, so I trimmed about 1/8 of an inch off of it before final assembly. So get out the exhaust pipes, and they've got some typical parting lines on them. So just sand those off, either scrape them off and then use a sand stick or even some light sandpaper. And I used a small drill bit to open up the exit end of the exhaust pipes there, and then I finished that with a hobby knife blade to get the size just right so that it looked like a realistic pipes. Then I painted them silver with the openings painted flat black. Now gather up the pieces for the interior here, as you can see, which also includes a set of seat belts. Find the parts for the roll cage, and then note that there'll be some parting lines on there too. So if you want to smooth those out, clean those lines up, and get those ready to assemble. And use a flat surface to put the cage together and make sure that everything's symmetrical. As you've seen, the interior is pretty basic. And here's the completed interior with the roll cage installed. And I had painted the interior, the dash, and the roll cage with a medium gray. I actually used a paint brand called One Shot White, and that's code L101, with a little bit of black added, about 20%. Now the interiors and the chassis should be light colors, as it makes working on the cars at the track at night easier to see what you're doing. Now the roll cages are also easier to inspect for cracks in the welds when there's light color paint. Now the door panels and the panels where the rear seat would have been are just painted aluminum, and the seat is painted semi-gloss black, and the seat belt and the harnesses are red with silver buckles. The rim of the steering wheel is painted flat black to replicate the friction tape that racers would wrap around their steering wheels. Now the instruments have enough raised detail that you can use a little black wash on them and have the detail stand out if you pick those out. Remember, scrape the paint and the chrome before gluing any of the assemblies together. Let's work on the body now, and it was pretty clear of mold lines, but there is some chrome trim, as you see highlighted here, that normally would not be left on a race car. Fortunately, the big wheel wells are all cut out, and also remember to remove the bridge there where the driver's side window is. You're going to have to take that out carefully and clean that off too. Then prep it with a little bit of sanding and prime it. So here the parts are all primed with a light gray, and the firewall and etc. radiator support window and the mirror, so get those ready for paint and assembly. I had sprayed the interior, the underside of the vehicle with a medium gray so that the roof was gray like the interior, and then after that I had painted the body with some One Shot blue, that's code L153 on the lower, and then taped that off and used some of that 101 white for the roof. Once the paint had cured, I began with the decals. You can see the large door numbers here were applied first. You probably won't need any setting solution, but keep it handy just in case you get a curl or something. But anyway, with copious amounts of warm water, put your decals on and place them properly, and then just blot them off with a cotton swab or a tissue or something. Kind of smooth them out, make sure there's no air bubbles underneath the decals, and removes the water so that they can dry properly. And so paint the battery and the radiator and the brake booster there black, a semi-gloss black, and you can detail the battery, with some chrome pen. Also on the firewall, there's some features there that can be highlighted with black Sharpie, like the lines and the electrical. And then once all of that is dried and ready, we're going to assemble those. The firewall and the radiator core support have locating marks on the inside of the body for positive placement. So scrape the glue off and put those all together. Use some white glue or clear cement glue to put the window in that goes in from the inside. And then there's still some chrome trim around the windshield, which actually helped keep the windshield in place. So we're going to cover that with some bare metal foil and move along. Now scrape some of the glue around these pins and we're going to glue the interior to the body. And there's pins front and back there, and also you can see behind that to the left some bosses there that are used to locate the chassis to the body. So use those locations we mentioned earlier and go ahead and put the radiator support into place along with the radiator and the battery and the firewall up against the near the windshield there. So now get these parts out, the painted hood, the bumpers, the Nerf bars, etc. We're going to add those to the chassis pan. You see the pins in the back there towards the right. That, of course, those are the ones that you'll glue into the bosses that you'd seen earlier on the body. So go ahead and wiggle this thing into position. So you can also see some of the detailing was picked out here with yellow shocks and the gas tank, etc. Now the exhaust pipes are added at this time. That's to make sure that they don't get knocked off during installation of the chassis to the body. And also note the drive shaft there, it's white, and that was for safety reasons because sometimes the drive shaft would fall out, and on the track it's easier to see in the evening if the drive shaft is white, so other drivers don't hit it. And so here's a view of the completed model. The hood, of course, is off right now, but that's to show you the engine bay, and overall it's a pretty nice rendition of the old racer, and I think it's going together pretty well and pretty easily. Here were all the parts that I had left over, including the decals that I didn't use, and so you'll probably find the same situation. So there's some spares for your parts stash. And finally, we're going to clean up those crash bars, paint those medium gray, and install those on the bumpers in front and the back. And that's it. Your model is complete. And if you'll notice, it looks pretty darn good. I mean, it's a simple kit, yes, but it harkens back to the days of the old dirt track and circle track racers, and it's really easy to build. It's a slump buster, if nothing else. It also could be something that a youngster would enjoy. They always love race cars, and big tires set this one off along with the big motor. And if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this step-by-step premium model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews, or you can find us on Facebook and our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.